So, in today's video, we're going to be discussing... Why am I wearing all black? I'm not talking about My Hero Academia. Nor am I talking about Vigilantes. One Piece, no. Dr. Stone, no. Black Clover, no. Oh, I know why I'm dressed like this. Because in today's video, we're going to be talking about Jujutsu Kaisen in the most recent chapter, and possibly how Yuji Itadori is potentially part cursed spirit. Let's get into this right after the intro. Hit it. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another manga discussion video, this time about Jujutsu Kaisen, manga chapter 143. And when it comes to this chapter and what we're going to be discussing, it's a particular few pages that could drastically impact the character of Yuji moving forward in the story, and really questioning who he really is as a person, or if he even is a person. But before we get more into that, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Big Blue Drew 97. If you like this type of content, I could potentially start doing more Jujutsu Kaisen content if that's what you're looking for. So leave likes and comments down below to know that you found this video entertaining and you want me to continue down this path. And with that out the way, let's get right into the discussion. And before we get more into the nitty gritty of what I really want to discuss in this chapter, because are we going to be discussing the Culling Game? No. Are we going to be discussing Yuta's betrayal of Jujutsu sorcery higher-ups? No. Are we going to talk about the conversation between Itadori and Megumi? No. We're actually going to be talking about the reveal of Yuji Itadori's father and potential mother, and how that could relate to the idea that he could potentially be part cursed spirit. But before we get into that, I'd like to give a little bit more context to the story of Jujutsu Kaisen and its inspirations, because that could tie directly into why I think that Yuji Itadori may be part cursed spirit. So, Jujutsu Sorcerer's mangaka Akutami Sensei has many inspirations to the story of Jujutsu Kaisen. And when it comes to Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, it takes a lot of inspiration from its predecessors in the Shonen Jump and the Shonen realm of storytelling. Primarily, when it comes to Akutami, a lot of his inspirations come from Togashi, Tite Kubo, Kishimoto, as well as Murata, who are the mangaka of some well-known shonen jump titles, which include Yu Yu Hakusho, Hunter x Hunter, Bleach, Naruto, and One Punch Man. And you can see these inspirations in Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole. You can see that it takes a lot of inspiration from how it's structured from One Punch Man when it comes to like the sorcerer classes, as well as the special grade curse classes. You can see that Yuji Itadori, when it comes to his relationship with Sukuna, is very similar to Naruto with the nine-tailed fox. You can also see that when it comes to Bleach, and that's something else we can get into a little bit more, how when it comes to his personality, it's more realistic than other shonen protagonists. He's not very edgy, but he is more realistic, such as Ichigo, who is like more realistic and grounded in the real world, similar to Itadori. And then even when it comes to Hunter x Hunter, when it comes to the power system of cursed spirits being very similar to that of Nin and Hunter x Hunter, but when it comes to Yu Yu Hakusho, an inspiration that could come from that could come from the main character of Yusuke Urameshi when it comes to Itadori Yuji, because for a lot of things that they share in common is that they've both died at least twice in their stories. They both have just immense natural talent and strength, but more importantly, a connection that they could also have is the fact that they have an ancestry rooted in like either demons or cursed spirits. Specifically when it comes to Yusuke, how because of his great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Ryzen impregnating a human woman, he eventually through the line became a Mazaku, which means that he was half human, half demon. And with that in mind, that could potentially be inspiration for Yuji Itadori, and the kind of idea that I want to talk about, how he could be part cursed spirit and part human. Also, inspiration can be taken from Ichigo from Bleach, where he was, now brace yourself for this, part human, part hollow, part Shinigami Soul Reaper, and part Quincy. 4 parts. And when it comes to Yuji Itadori, he could just be one part cursed spirit, either half, a fourth, or eighth, but still be part cursed spirit, which could be affecting him in the story moving forward. So, let's now tackle the new information that we learned in chapter 143 when it came to Itadori Yuji and his parents. In the chapter, we only get 2.5, 3 pages max of Yuji as a child and his potential connection to his parents, because the reasoning why we actually see this in this chapter, and it's actually brought up in this flashback, is the idea that babies can remember more than you think. And this could be lead up to the fact that something that Choso said a few chapters prior is that he asked Yuji to remember his father, who could have the stitch marks on his forehead. And that ties into what we see in the flashback, because Choso said he should remember that, and unfortunately Yuji, quote-unquote, dies last chapter. In this chapter, we kind of see this flashback where we are reintroduced back to Yuji's grandfather, Wasuke, but we also get the introduction of Yuji's father, Jin, and they're having this argument about Yuji and why Yuji's father wants to stay with this specific woman, and we don't know who this woman is. It's possible that it is Kaori, but we just don't know for certain, because it seems to be a little bit ambiguous, because it's saying that Yuji's grandfather says that Kaori had died, but she comes in and says father-in-law, and we see that she has the stitches on her face, and that is very important, because this means that in some way or another, whoever this person is, most likely the person that gave birth to Yuji, has a direct connection to one of the most notorious and infamous Jujutsu sorcerers, the most evil Jujutsu sorcerer in the story, Noritoshi Kamo. So, now that we brought him up, let's go over a few pieces of information that we know about him. First of all, we know he's a part of the Kamo clan, that he's the ancestor of, weirdly enough, Noritoshi Kamo, and that's weird that you would name your child after the most infamous Jujutsu sorcerer that has defiled your clan. But it kind of makes sense within the story, because the person who was given this name is someone that they didn't care about, didn't want the family until he was needed the most. So from now on, I'm going to be referring to the ancestor of Noritoshi Kamo as OG Noritoshi Kamo, to make it seem and flow a little bit better. So OG Noritoshi Kamo is known as, for the most part, most likely the main antagonist of Jujutsu Kaisen right now, because he has taken over the body currently of Geto, and how during his time he was seen to be one of the most evilest Jujutsu sorcerers in their time at that moment, and put a blot on the Kamo family, and this all occurred 150 years ago. And he was known for these horrendous experiments done upon the people of this time, but he is most well known probably now for his creation and the founding with his research of the Cursed Womb Death paintings, and that is going to be crucial because of how these came about and how that relates to Yuji Itadori in the present. And before we get more into that, we have to clarify. I have to also clarify one main thing, that when it comes to the OG Noritoshi Kamo, and it's that he may not be the original Noshitori Kamo, because we later on learn in chapter 134 that whoever this person is goes by many different names, but is most likely a form of cursed spirit or some other entity that has taken over the body of the OG Noritoshi Kamo, meaning that the actions that he may have taken may not have been his own. So even though I'm referring to him as such, we actually do not know truly who he is. We just know his oldest incarnation as being the OG Noritoshi Kamo. But even so, referring to him as that, we can now talk about the cursed womb death paintings. So, the cursed womb death painting are actually cursed objects mixed with the blood of both humans and cursed spirits. And from here, we're introduced to a particular individual. We do not know who she is, but 150 years ago, she, due to her genetics, was able to produce a offspring that is part human, part cursed spirit. And because of this, she was eventually ostracized by the society and tried to flee to Jujutsu Sorcerer Haven, where unfortunately she was taken in by the OG Noritoshi Kamo, where he then began to do experiments on her and led to the creation of these 9 cursed womb death paintings. And from these death paintings were created 3 specific ones that we are aware of. You have Eso, Kechizu, and Choso. And Choso is probably the main one that we want to focus on, because in chapter 141 and 142, he announces to Naoya that he is the oldest brother of 10 siblings. And this is very interesting because if you do the math, because we know that Choso is a part of the 9 cursed womb death paintings, that unfortunately, when it comes to how they were created from this woman, whoever she was, being impregnated by a cursed spirit, but then having the babies aborted. Dark. But that he is the oldest brother of 10, and that 10 would most likely include Yuji Itadori. So you could assume that Itadori is a cursed womb death painting, but that cannot be the case because we literally see him in 143 in that sort of flashback as a baby, which would technically make him the 11th child. But here's the thing though, even though Choso said that he's the oldest sibling, he may not necessarily be that case because we don't know what happened to the first child. Because here's the thing, the first child was born. Whether it was male or female, that first child was born and was half human, half cursed spirit, and we don't know what happened to it. And from what I'm thinking with all the information that is provided, that child could have grown up and lived like a life into the future, and I'll tie that back into later. But I want to specifically focus on Choso because Choso specifically states that he is a child born of his mother, born of a cursed spirit, and born of the blood of the OG Noritoshi Kamo. And this is where a little bit of the conflict with this idea comes from, because if he has like 3 quote-unquote parents, then wouldn't that mean that he was the first child born from the mother before Kamo came into existence? But that can't be the case because it is specifically stated that he is a cursed womb death painting, which is the 9 pregnancies that the woman had that were eventually aborted. So what I am actually thinking is that maybe that OG Noritoshi Kamo misses blood after the fact that the woman got pregnant by another cursed spirit, and it still would fall into that line, which could imply that instead of there being actually 10 siblings, that there may actually be an 11th that Choso may not be aware of, because he will only be aware of himself and the 9 that he's a part of, and then Yuji Itadori. Because here's the thing, tying back into what we learned in 143, Yuji's mother is most likely inhabited by whatever creature that was inhabiting the OG Noritoshi Kamo. And here's the thing, if we are implying that whatever this is cursed spirit, the cursed spirit has taken over another body and maybe has incorporated itself into that body, meaning that when Jin, did the thing with her, potentially Yuji, when he was born, due to her new biology being possessed by the OG Noritoshi Kamo, gave birth to Yuji and may have incorporated cursed energy into him, kind of making him part cursed spirit. That is one idea that I have, but another idea that I have that could be even more impactful is, what if the first child of the woman that Kamo Noritoshi OG may have experimented on, maybe she lived up until this moment, maybe her aging was regressed. She slowed aging. She may look younger even though she may be 105. Maybe she actually grew up and was able to live to this time before she eventually dies, but then the OG Noshitori Kamo took over her body. Basically what I'm saying is that maybe Yuji's mother was the child of the woman of the half-cursed spirit, half human, and now because she's possessed by the OG Noshitori Kamo, gave birth to Yuji Itadori, that with that logic in mind may actually be 1/4 cursed spirit. And here's the thing that's interesting, because that could be the case, and it could, and tying into the idea that Choso may not know the existence of the first child, is because Choso in chapter 139 specifically asked Yuji if his father had stitches on his forehead, but from the flashback we saw in 143, it wasn't his father, but his mother. Technically, and if we're like alluding to the idea that he may be referring to the OG Noshitori Kamo, Yuji was still born of a woman that was able to give birth to him, and if he is biologically related to Choso, who is also part cursed spirit, part human, that would imply that Yuji Itadori, at the very least, is human. Well, at the very most is full human, but at the very least is part cursed spirit in one way or another. And that, because he could be part cursed spirit, that could be explaining the like weird things that are occurring around him, how he was able to change the memories of Toto, and how he was somehow still able to like intervene into Choso's memories even though they are related, because he's part cursed spirit. So yeah, that's kind of the idea that I'm having. And if he is part cursed spirit, like I said, it could be due to the fact that it was being taken inspiration from Yusuke and Ichigo, and that could be very important because it could lead to the idea that the reasoning why Itadori was born is for everything in Jujutsu Kaisen to play into place, and that he may theoretically been created to be a vestige for Sukuna, because how well he was able to ingest him and be able to have full control over him at first glance. So it's a really interesting like theory discussion that I've come with it. There could be a little bit flaws with it because I've been thinking it over a few days, but for the most part what I'm thinking is that potentially with all the evidence that we have right now, because we could get a little bit more evidence that could prove or disprove this idea, that most likely Yuji Itadori could potentially be part cursed spirit because his relationship to Choso, as Choso says that he is a younger brother, as well as the fact that Choso has the DNA, the blood of the OG Noritoshi Kamo, and we see that this person, whoever he is, whatever he is, also inhabited the body of the mother that Yuji was most likely born to. With all that idea in mind, he could just potentially be part cursed spirit, which could just lead to the explanation of everything that has happened to him in the story and why he has certain effects on certain people. So yeah, that's all I really want to talk about in this video about Jujutsu Kaisen, and specifically Itadori being a cursed spirit. What did you think of this sort of like theory discussion that I had in this video? Do you think you like it? Did you dislike it? Do you think that it's a very high possibility? Or do you think that it could be something else? Could you just think that he's just a normal human that was just thrown into it and that the connections are just coincidental? I don't think that is coincidental at all. The fact that his, like, what we are assuming is his mother, potentially possessed like the brain of the OG Noritoshi Kamo, that's very likely that at the very least he has an ability, or he has something unique about him that OG Noshitori Kamo just took over this woman's body to get to or to create. It's just a very likely scenario, but what do you think? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit that notification bell for more times you're notified from me uploading videos. Do all of that cool jazz, and hopefully I'm able to catch you in the next video. Goodbye!